Firstly, I well and truly hope that everybody is keeping safe and healthy. This is unprecedented times that we've heard from numerous experts, but we will get through this strong and safe. And please know that in Durham College and in all of our partners, you have community, you have people who are there for you. So please reach out to us with whatever we can help with. My name is Ali Hirji. I have the honor of working at Durham College at the AI Hub, as well as the Center for Cybersecurity Innovation. I have the honor of working with some really inspiring folks at the college, including Ruchi Rajkumar, who leads many of our projects and coordinates them, Dr. Vibha Tyagi, who is really a mentor to all of us, who helps us in putting all of our projects together, and Mauricia Cuellar, who is the lead for our knowledge translation and marketing activities. There are other folks from Durham College on the line as well, including Chris Gillis and a couple of our students. So any questions related to DC, please feel free to reach out to us. Today, for this webinar, which will last for approximately 50 to 55 minutes, I wanted to set one housekeeping rule, which is everybody has been kept on mute except the speakers and myself, of course. If you have questions, please drop them in the chat. I will try and get to them during the discussions if possible. Otherwise, I'll leave 15 minutes at the end. Ideally, hold your questions for the end. But if you really have to throw it in there, then I'll make sure I try and leave it in. The session, just so you're aware, is being recorded and will be posted on our social media channels as well. So let's dive into it. I'm going to have each of the speakers introduce themselves for 30 seconds, and let's start off with Kat.
Great. My name is Kat Coode. I am a software engineer and architect by trade. That's where I came from. I worked at BlackBerry for a really long time. And then 7 years ago, I launched my own company, Binary Tattoo, binary for all things digital and tattoo for the permanence of what we're leaving online. And so now I work with data privacy, compliance, and helping companies ensure they're protecting that data privacy and ensuring individuals are being protected.
Thank you for that introduction that was steeped in epistemology and giving us a definition of binary tattoo. Well done, Kat. Farooq and Jeff, you guys have a challenge now. So I'll start off with Farooq. Can you beat that introduction? 30 seconds.
Okay, here goes. Farooq Naiyer. I am currently the Chief Information Security Officer at Orion. And for those of you who don't know about Orion, the name Orion is actually an acronym, which is Ontario Research and Innovation Optical Network. We are the research and education network for the province of Ontario. And we also happen to be the first non-commercial 5G network of Canada. Apart from that, I am a shared CISO or a virtual CISO for about 29 institutions in Ontario, comprising of 14 universities and 15 colleges. We are part of a consortium which is known as OnCheck, which is an acronym which stands for Ontario Cybersecurity Higher Education Consortium. I've been a cybersecurity professional for over 18 years now. I've spent lots of time in IT audit and compliance. I've worked for a couple of big fours, PwC and EY. Have worked for some of the crown corporations in Canada. And of course, I have lots of experience of working in the financial sector. And I'm looking forward to today's conversation. Thank you for having me over here. Thank you.
Thank you, Farooq. Along with all of that, Farooq is also the lead for our AI Hub Advisory Committee and is also leading a lot of activities with the Center for Cyber. Farooq was also the person who inspired me to get more deeper into cybersecurity during my time at Orion. So thank you, Farooq. And lastly, we'll go over to Jeff. Jeff, over to you. 30 seconds, sir.
Hi, I'm Jeff. I'm actually an accountant by trade, so I bring a slightly different perspective to this whole cybersecurity topic. Running small businesses, running large companies, cybersecurity has always been an element we've had to consider. Everybody's got a limited budget, everybody's got a limit to their knowledge, and not always the cash to afford cybersecurity help from professionals like a panel like this. So I'd advise you to listen up, get some tips. Working from home is a challenge. It's not something we've had to deal with on a day-to-day basis necessarily. And hopefully, over the course of today, we can give you a few tips about what to look for when you're setting yourself up at home so that you don't have to worry about cybersecurity when you should be worrying about your family's health.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Jeff is also a mentor to me, a mentor to many students at Durham College. In fact, one of our first students to be hired last semester in cybersecurity was Disha, who's on the line as well. She works with Jeff at Cybersecurity Compliance Corp. So Jeff, Thank you for your constant support of Durham College and everything that we do. Jeff's team was also a sponsor of the Global Cyber Olympics, as well as the recently concluded Women in Cybersecurity Conference along with CyberX. So thank you very much, Jeff, for everything. So we're going to jump right into this session right now. I believe my voice is projecting loud and clear, so the speakers can hear me fine. I do hope we don't have any technical difficulties. If we do, I do apologize. So let's begin. The idea for today's session is suddenly now, while a lot of us may occasionally work from home once a week maybe, now work from home is expected wherever possible. We're now converting our homes into our enterprise, into our office space for the foreseeable future. A lot of people will talk to you about, hey, there's some digital practices that you can follow, strong passwords, et cetera, et cetera. That's all good, and we'll talk about that. But I want you folks to shed some light on the physical aspect of security. What are some of the things within your home you need to think about when setting up your office at home? Kat, I want to start with you for the next minute to shed some light on physical security.
So I think later we're going to be talking about things like hackers and people who are trying to get your data. But one of the biggest problems companies have is what we call insider threat, which is when it comes from the inside. And then we have accidental or non-malicious insider threat, which is where people may be able to breach your systems from the inside of your system. In the case of working from home, that insider threat comes from children and spouses and partners and roommates. And so all of a sudden you have a home computer and your kids need it to log into homeschooling, or your roommate's wondering if they can just quickly check their email. If you were in an office and someone came to your office and is like, hey, can I just use your computer quickly? You'd be, no, that's my work computer, and no, you can't use it. So one of the big things to me is, and I know it's not always technically feasible because not everyone has the amount of technology at home to distribute to family members, but if you can separate the actual physical equipment for individual people, and if you don't have the ability to do that, then at least ensure you are logging out of any kind of work or business accounts that you're using, and so that other people are logging into separate accounts and you're not sharing downloads and cookies and everything else that might come with that.
Very interesting point. And I think, often in the world of IT, we talk about shared services. And now that sort of takes a very different environment because it's a shared home that you're working in. And I want to loop in Farooq into this because Farooq, I want to play up a little bit on the point that Kat just mentioned about somebody else using your computer and those kind of elements in your homes. What are some steps that we need to think about when it comes to physical security and sharing this workspace with our families? Ruchi, I think Farooq is still on mute. Can you unmute him, please? Yeah, Farooq, just give us a second.
Okay. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can. Sorry about that.
Okay, Ali, can you please repeat your question again? Sorry.
Yeah, so my question was, Kat mentioned some really interesting points about the home office now as a shared space. And there are other people around you, and you might have a child that says, hey, can I just check something on YouTube, or can I do something really quick? What are some tips that you can give people in terms of maintaining a secure physical environment at home?
So one of the things that I've been talking about lately with my work folks is that first thing is treat your home office as your office space. So what that means is that your home office space should be should have the same controls as your office space. So make sure that wherever you have your home office, in your basement, in another room or something, nobody else has access to it. Make sure, the kids know that it's off limits. But the other thing that I also want to highlight is pets also. People have pets in the houses, right? And of course, and at times accidents happen, right? You have a cup of coffee lying over there and some pet spills that over. So this is beyond even security. So I'm just talking about steps which people need to take. So please make sure that your office issued devices are not accessed physically or logically by anybody else. I mean, in any shape or form. So make sure nobody enters that space. Make sure that whenever you're stepped off, that the room is locked or closed and everything. The other thing that you also want to mention in terms of physical security is that we also carry wireless devices, right? Which are often issued by the organization or which is managed through an MDM. Please make sure that if you are going out. I'm sure given the current conditions, people are not going out, but people do go out to get groceries or gas or something else. Make sure that you do not carry your, if you do carry your wireless device, make sure it's properly locked. If you carry your laptop or other wireless device or your some other device, make sure it's properly locked and everything. And of course, the other thing is making sure that there is hard drive encryption on your device also, something, because if it's misplaced or you lose it, make sure that there's encryption on it also. So these are some of the basic controls which you can have in place to make sure that your devices and your office workspace is also secure. One thing that I want to add briefly is that given the fact that people are going to be working from home indefinitely, they also have paperwork which they have with them. And of course, that paperwork could have some kind of PII or confidential information on it. I won't talk about it right now because I know you have a question on it, but please make sure that you also manage your office documentation, your official devices securely and responsibly.
Thank you, Farooq. Great tips there. And Jeff, again, just to sort of set the context, I know Farooq and Kat covered quite a bit there, but is there any quick thing that you want to point out about physical security in the home that perhaps people don't necessarily pay attention? And I'll give you an example. It's about a month ago, Farooq shared an article with me saying how overnight cleaners were a threat, or being used as a potential threat, where they were being used to get information from different offices because they had access to it late in the nights when they were doing cleaning. Similar to that, are there any blind spots in the home that you can point us to?
Yeah, I'd say the thing that people don't think about is really what this first question is all about. It's physical security. Yep. So it isn't just the technology. It's about what people can see. It's about how they have access to not just information, but devices. There was an example out of the States, and these happen quite frequently, where an accounting firm had tax information on a server. Server was at the back of the office near a back door. Thieves broke through the back door that had really terrible security because it was an internal hallway. They walked out with the server and stole the data. That wasn't a hacker. That wasn't a sophisticated online player, a phishing email. That was somebody physically walking out with a server. So in your home, when you're setting up your home office and when you've got your technology out, you shouldn't be visible from a window. Don't be sitting in your front living room window with your work laptop open and a number of devices. You need to be in a place where it is secure from prying eyes from outside the home. Everybody's at home. Remember that everybody's at home. We've all had cars broken into, and change stolen. Well, now people can be just outside your home looking in and seeing what you're doing. So be aware of what's around you. Make sure that you're physically locking your door when you go for that one walk a day, keeping 6 to 12 feet from your nearest neighbor. Make sure that you are locking up your machines, putting them away. These things shouldn't be visible from outside the home. It creates an opportunity for somebody to come in and just physically take that object.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. I think one of the things that my students were talking to me about is now a lot of folks, just to encourage community. We do this at Durham College as well. We say, hey, take a picture of yourself working from home. And someone will take a picture, if it's me, doing a little selfie, and then your screen's on, and oops, I was filling out a contract, and that has some information there. So there are a lot of blind spots that exist in the home, and I do appreciate the fact that you've pointed us towards that. I obviously want to move into some other handy items right now, but I will say this to all of our attendees is that both my colleagues Farhan and Nabil from the Center for Cyber are on right now. They're making notes, and on Monday we'll compile a little slide deck for tips that you may just want to follow. There's also some stuff from each of the speakers that we'll be sharing that you can use just to guide your own work. So don't worry about taking notes. We've got you covered there. I want to go back to you, Jeff, because Jeff, you mentioned earlier on that you're an accountant and you've got an interest in security and all of that stuff, and hence you've gone down this journey. I think one thing that a lot of people don't seem to realize is the importance of work and understanding work from home policies that are issued by your companies. Either there is a policy, but nobody's read it. B, there might not even be a policy. Could you get us started on this conversation of what is a work from home policy and how does that impact how we conduct ourselves from a security perspective?
Yeah, anybody who's heard me talk before knows that frameworks are near and dear to my heart. The only way to know that you've done everything you're supposed to do is to follow a prescriptive guideline. So looking through any framework, it's going to tell you that you need to start with policies. You need to know what it is that you should be following. And if you think you're smart enough to create that yourself, you're likely mistaken. So follow the guidance that's out there. Your organization, if it doesn't have a work from home policy that is specifically titled work from home, it likely has some combination of an acceptable use of technology, a data protection policy, a privacy policy, and depending on your industry, each of those things will contribute to what it is you need to be aware of when you're working from home. So make sure that if you haven't reviewed what it is that your company publishes as a policy, that you do that. This is that opportunity. You're now at home. Take the time to secure your environment, starting with understanding what your obligations are. You can always feel free to research, but your best contact to determining what your company determines is appropriate is your technology or compliance department. You're not on an island. You're not isolated as much as you're physically isolated. Reach out through technology and find out what those policies say. And they will talk about most of the things that we're going to cover on the call today.
Absolutely. Kat, I'll turn over to you because the word compliance is also C for cat, C for compliance, right? And C for Coode. So we know that compliance is very close to you as well. I want to paint a little bit of a dark picture. What happens if you're not compliant with those policies? And what are the ramifications that could occur if you're not paying attention to those policies with an acute eye?
Well, a lot of businesses are reliant on being compliant in order to work with other businesses, right? A lot of clients won't work with you if you don't meet compliance standards, or you could lose. And I mean, at this point where a lot of people are losing business anyway, you don't want to lose a customer because you're not compliant with those regulations. For me, one of the bigger ones that I'm seeing actually so all the policies that Jeff mentioned, but I also like to help companies have a social media policy, and there should be a photo policy as well. And what I'm seeing, I mean, I always advocate that everything online should be considered public and permanent. I keep seeing pictures of Zoom calls where people are like, hey, we're having a meeting. That's great if you have permission from every single person in that meeting to capture that and post it. But not everyone has got an awesome background like Farooq has, but not everyone has an office, and there's sometimes, although there shouldn't be people running in the back of your background. So it's actually a breach of privacy to capture someone else's image and share it publicly on social media. I love the example you gave where someone captured their screen and there was private information on it. So typically we put in privacy policies around photos that say you can't capture photographs inside the work environment and share them publicly and online. And yet people are doing it now all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And Farooq, Ruchi will just unmute you because I do want to come back to you. So Ruchi, I'll wait for you to unmute Farooq. But I want to sort of take off where, yep, you're unmuted. Farooq, what Kat just said is so important because a lot of us who are working in small enterprises, yes, we can communicate some of these things and say, hey, look, just making you aware of this. But there's so many nuances here. Like, who would have thought that just a picture like that is a breach of privacy? While you're thinking you're fostering community, you mean well, but you do something that could put you in hot water. Farooq, I want you to shed some light around policy, but also how do you govern policy so quickly in large organizations, in education institutions? What are the challenges there?
So I would like to start off by a very famous quote, which says that culture eats strategy for breakfast. So when we are talking about policy, we are talking about a change in culture too, because most of the organizations might have a policy, but from the security culture point of view, they might not be that mature. And given the current circumstances, I mean, in the past 2 to 3 weeks, the entire world has changed. The entire work culture has changed. The entire way we operate has changed. And I think when we talk about policy and culture, I think most of the organizations have also updated their work from home policy,
yep,
their acceptable use policy, their social media policy, their video conferencing policy. And most of them, I mean, and as we speak, I mean, I've got lots of friends in the private and public sector who are telling me about the fact that they're dealing not just with a change in policy, but a change in culture also. So I would like to also highlight that last week I was on a roundtable for higher education in Canada, and one of the points which was brought up was that security awareness should be made mandatory for everybody who has access to online resources at the institutions. So I think there should be a push for better security awareness. And of course, based on the current threat landscape, there are new threats emerging every day. And I think I will talk about that later today.
Yeah.
With lots of scams and everything out there. So I think it's a big responsibility on the shoulder of IT ops, the management of the organization, to make sure that all of these things are communicated. One of the things that I'm doing at my organization at Orion is that I'm doing like a weekly lunch and learn. I mean, it's bring your own lunch. But what we are doing is that we're making sure that I'm talking about all the security risks which hit close to home, talking about the secure practices and all that. So it's a combination. It's not just about pushing a policy, it's making sure that you communicate that to your employees, making sure that you have an awareness session for your people and have an interactive discussion also. Like I have an open forum with my team at Orion, and we have a discussion about that. How do they feel about this work from home culture and policy, and are they having any challenges? I mean, making sure that everybody comes on board and accepts this and understands the risks also.
Fantastic. Great point. I just want to spend 2 more minutes, and Farooq, if you can remain unmuted, because we do want you to chime in. Jeff, I'm sure you see this a lot, right? That, and you've said this to us numerous times, that you deal with small to medium businesses, especially the smaller ones. Many of them may not have a policy. Could you give them 2 to 3 tips on how they could get started with creating a work from home policy?
Yeah. So number 1, review this presentation when it comes out on Monday. Number 2, review the tip sheet that Durham College puts out following that. Yep. The reality is there are tips out there. If you type in work from home policy into any search engine, you will come up with dozens and dozens and dozens. It's not about following the right policy. It's about putting in place a policy. It's about giving people the ability to follow some simple tips to give them peace of mind so they can focus on the things that are important. One of the things that I think as security professionals, we get tied up a lot in being safe and being cyber secure, because that is what we're all about. And it's a lot of work to stay ahead of what's out there, or even abreast of what's out there. The reality is business comes first. If your business is challenged, if you are struggling, you need to fix those issues first. Cybersecurity is a part of that. You need awareness, and building it through opportunities like this. That's how you do that. But focus on delivering on your business. Focus on the things that you need to do to survive what's going on right now. Some businesses are going through monumental change, and all we're suggesting when it comes to cybersecurity is that you reach out for a minimum level of education, protection, support, checklists to give people peace of mind, to help you a little bit get ahead of the scams that are increasing by the day related to this pandemic. Just stay ahead of it, but keep in mind, as a small to medium-sized business, your obligation is to stay in business. So manage all of your risks together and make cybersecurity a part of that.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Well said. Kat, if I can get you to chime in for 30 seconds. One, I've been talking to quite a few people in the lead up to this webinar. One business owner did ask me, he's like, Ali, even though I have a policy, I really don't know how to police it. And I don't even know if that was the right term. But his words to me were, I only find out that somebody's done something wrong when I find out they've done something wrong. What would you recommend to a small business owner when it comes to just making sure that this policy has been articulated and has been absorbed by his or her employees?
I agree. It's really hard to police. What I would do is certainly have an education session, have a webinar, right? Invite all of your employees to do it. And if you can put together a couple questions, like a quiz, and have everybody answer the quiz questions, then at least people are engaged. There are a lot of online training forums out there. If people want to message me after, I can send you questions that you can ask. But certainly having that feedback of, hey, answer this quick little quiz means people actually have to pay attention in that hour and fill stuff out.
Thanks, Kat. I appreciate that. So we have about 30 minutes, actually maybe 25, because I do want to leave more for questions. I see 2 questions have come with regards to the school board. So we will get to those. Thank you, Jonah B. or Janab, for posting them. I want to go to the elephant in the room, which I think all of you know is video conferencing. We are using Zoom right now. Ruchi spent some time taking notes from Danny Pahar on how we can ensure that we use the most secure as possible platform within Zoom. Of course, there are questions, and we are looking at other platforms as well. But Farooq, I want to start with you because I know that the whole video conferencing and Zoom situation has hit your organization pretty hard. What's going on? Is it secure to use this platform? What's the 411 here, Farooq? I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thanks a lot. I mean, this is a topic which hits close to home because we also use Zoom at work. And I think just to be fair to the situation, the past 2 weeks have been really tough for Zoom. I mean, in terms of numbers, their user base from just about 10 million users back in December 2019 has now grown to 200 million users now. So that's a huge scale in operations on the side of Zoom. And I think one of the things that what's happening is that there's been lots of bad press that they have been getting lately because of the astronomical adopt and that service and everything. So just a few things which I just want to mention right now. I am a user of Zoom, but I'm not an advocate of Zoom. So I would like to talk from an unbiased perspective. The first thing is that given the fact that in the past 3 weeks, I come across at least 6 to 7 articles per day which talks about the vulnerabilities and weaknesses within the Zoom platform. So the first thing that I want to talk about is something which Kat mentioned. I just want to pick on what she said. And she spoke about having a policy around photographs and consent and how people behave and how people use apps. The first thing is that people should be behaving or acting responsibly if they're using the Zoom platform. Just sharing snapshots of your Zoom session on social media is not recommended. And I'm sure by now everybody knows the Boris Johnson story. So Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of England, United Kingdom, had a cabinet meeting over Zoom, and a snapshot of that was shared on the social media. And since it was a personal Zoom meeting, that information was shared with everybody. And we're talking about the Prime Minister of a country. And we know for a fact that there are lots of people are using it. So I just want to talk about some of the things which people could do by using the functionality within the Zoom platform itself. And of course, I would like to talk about some general practices which you can employ by using other platforms like WebEx or Teams and everything. And some of those things are, first of all, add a password. So everyone has to type a password when they enter into a meeting. Zoom does provide this option, so make sure you do that. Second one, which I just spoke about, was creating a unique ID for the meeting. The other thing which you should also encourage is that if somebody is signing in by using the app, not by phone, make sure that they sign in with their real name. If anybody is signing in with a nickname or something, and you cannot
Alibaba as an example.
Exactly. Yeah. And we don't know that Alibaba, right? So so make sure that you have a host. You have at least 2 or 3 hosts or admins who are making sure that they keep a check on that. The other one is which Zoom provides is that they have an option for locking the session after everybody has joined in.
Correct.
The next one is disable the ability to join before the host. The other one, which is not a default option, but you should enable that, is you should enable the waiting room or the virtual lobby option, so that hosts have the option of letting people in. One of the things that I want to mention over here is that some of the video conferencing tools out there do offer by default the virtual lobby option, like you know about WebEx, you know about Microsoft Teams, which offers you that option. The other one, which I really want to recommend, is disable the screen sharing option. There's a new concept out there called as Zoom bombing, in which random users can just share the screen. So make sure you do that. Make sure you turn off the whiteboard sharing option. Make sure that you turn off the ability for users like me to use virtual backgrounds. So these are just some of the tips which people can do while using the Zoom platform. And of course, not just with Zoom, but with other platforms too. I would like to briefly talk about the Microsoft Teams platform, because I was on another webinar this morning, and we were talking about what should the users of Microsoft Teams do, and especially in the higher education sector or the education sector, where there's a huge adoption of Microsoft Teams. So the good news is that yesterday Microsoft Teams team at Microsoft issued a huge advisory on things and tips for people around using Microsoft Teams. And that advisory has a bunch of information about user management, data loss prevention, saving information or recording, and of course, using advanced threat protection within Microsoft, and of course, user management, and a bunch of things. And I would really like to give it off to the Microsoft team, because they, apart from that, they have got a bunch of other white papers available on the website. And I would be more than happy to share that link on the chat window shortly. And of course, these are some of the tips which are out there. So just make sure that you use the video conferencing platform securely and responsibly, and treat it the same way, like the way you manage other apps and other operating systems.
Thank you, Farooq. And I do appreciate if you can share your links with me, and then Farhan and Nabil will put it into a document. Kat, I want to come to you now. There's been a question from a very active member in the chat group, so thank you. Talking about school boards are offering teachers, I know Farooq spoke about WebEx, they're offering them a lot of access to Google tools. Now, there are children involved in this, minors in many cases. Kat, I'd appreciate your perspective on this.
Absolutely. Okay, so children are protected under something called the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, which protects all children under the age of 13. And it essentially says that their data cannot be collected and resold. So what happened was Google created Google for Schools several years ago, and they are this COPPA. They are COPPA compliant. So when schools are using Google for School, it is an independent platform to Google. And a lot of people get really nervous about the fact that Google collects everyone's data and they're sharing it and reselling it. In this case, there's not a concern from a privacy perspective about the kids' data being collected or anything like that. They are all set up from within the school, and those email addresses are limited to school use. So all of that is fine. Where there becomes issues is people sending private information using these systems. So same thing, I've walked by, my kids are on Google for School, I've walked by some of their meetups, and I've noticed lots of kids, again, in bedrooms, in public spaces in their homes, people walking around in the background. So same rules as we have for adults is not to screen capture and not to ensure your background's clear so someone isn't capturing your information. But from that perspective, everything is safe to the point where it's not, right? It's the same thing as Zoom, same thing as WebEx. If teachers are trying their best here, this is all new for them. This is really, really hard for them. And just to clarify, there's a distinction between the online platform that they were going to offer in Ontario schools and this e-learning. This e-learning is totally different. So just ensuring that if you do have children, they're not sending private information over any of these links, but that also their data is not being collected by Google for Schools.
Thank you, Kat. Kat, if you can just stay on that thought for a second. Another friend of the college, Zainab Fazil, who was one of the early supporters of the AI Hub when we began. So she is a practitioner in mental health and a behavioral psychologist. So thank you, Zainab, for taking the time. She's mentioned something here, which I want to divide into two pieces. She said, is there a list of platforms that are HIPAA compliant? Blue Jeans is, but I'm wondering if there are any others. Could you take a few seconds? What is this compliance standard? And any ideas on which other platforms follow this standard?
That are HIPAA compliant?
HIPAA compliant, yes.
Okay, so HIPAA is the health standard. HIPAA is most of North America. Every province in Canada actually has their own. Like Ontario's is called PHIPAA. And so essentially the regulation around HIPAA allows you to securely send medical data. So all private data has its own value, but higher sensitivity data, which is typically health data and financial data, have a higher risk and they have their own regulations, like banks have their own regulations for financial, and medical has their own regulations for health. I have yet to see a comprehensive list of these, but I know our friends at Armor Cyber have developed one that's HIPAA compliant. There are a lot of tools that are available right now that will allow people to have conferences online with medical professionals. Basically what it's doing is ensuring that the information is encrypted, and so it's being sent securely, and it's ensuring that we can't get, like Farooq had alluded to, these Zoom bombers. It's ensuring that people can't get into your chats or into the data and can't hack into the data while it's being sent. So if you have tools that you know of that are HIPAA compliant, a lot of the hospitals are releasing lists. If we can find a link, we'll include it, of course, in this deck. I haven't seen a full list yet of HIPAA compliant.
Fantastic. I also know that Medha Saraya from Connect Health is on, and she's due to make some major announcements in the mental health space. And I think that list would be very, very important to share, especially now as more transactions in terms of exchanges are happening through video conferencing. Jeff, I know that the plan was not necessarily to talk too much about the video conferencing piece with you, but I do want to get your perspective on two things around video conferencing. Number one is, based on what you've heard, is there anything around best practices on using video conferences that you'd like to share? And second, since you brought it up, I want to go to Graham Berry's question from Net Mechanics, where he says, can you shed a little bit of light on devices like Alexa and voice assistants? And what are your thoughts there? So Jeff, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, I think you always need to do a risk assessment on what it is that you're sharing. I mean, we've all used various tools to keep in touch with parents, to keep in touch with kids, to talk to various parties. Some of the conversations you have with your teams are really just to connect and ensure that everybody's got a lifeline to reach out to. Those aren't super sensitive, confidential conversations that need, the highest level of security. Check-in email to make sure that somebody's doing okay. But there are certainly, this is going to lead into the conversation about data, not just video capture. But when you're communicating sensitive data, you need to be aware of it. Awareness is really that starting point. And then knowing what your policies are, and then feeding that through to the steps you're taking. If you need a VPN in place, if you need to be accessing cloud-based tools in order to ensure that you are taking advantage of best-in-class security, that's what you need to do. This is that great opportunity to transfer the stuff that you were doing on some local server, which may not be accessible anymore in this environment physically, transfer to the cloud. Take advantage of where companies like QuickBooks are spending their money. I read an interesting article about Zoom today where they quoted the CEO. It was in Secure World News. It was a fascinating description of the steps they're taking to try to secure their platform amidst some bad publicity, but a massive increase in usage. So there are obviously we've covered tips around video conferencing in great detail here, but really just make sure that the steps you're taking to secure what you're doing are consistent with the risk that you're taking and the sensitivity of the information being exchanged.
Great points. And I think, I see a note from Jonathan Brown, who's from the lovely town of Coburg, another supporter of Durham College. He's spoken about voice for students and AODA compliance and privacy online. Jeff, if I'll just go back to Kat, any thoughts on the AODA compliance and the question that Jonathan has brought up?
I don't know what the schools have produced in terms of a lot of where they stand with the compliance. So I haven't looked at that. So I don't know right now on where that stands. I know my own school sent me a message last week and said, please write a code of conduct for our students. And I added all the privacy elements into it. But not everyone has access to someone who knows this stuff. Right. But yeah, I don't at this time know where the schools are.
Thank you. And I do want everyone to know is that at the end of the call, we will be sharing details if you want to get in touch with folks like Jeff and Kat who focus on this kind of activities. I also know that there are other folks on this call, including Ravi Samlal, who's the lead for IT at the Canadian Memorial Chiropractic College. These are all folks that would be willing to share. And we'll be sharing contact details as and when you need them. So we have permission for that as well. So please, I appreciate the questions. Keep them coming. We have about 12 to 13 minutes more for a chat. I could ask more questions on video conferencing, etc., but I think we've scratched the surface quite neatly here. I want to go to a topic that we'll go to best practices next, but a timely topic, which is COVID-19. Farooq, I'll wait for Ruchi to unmute you. So Ruchi, if you can proceed to unmute him, and I'll ask my question. So Farooq, I'll start with you. And if you can just take the next minute or two just to talk about what is a COVID-related kind of cybersecurity attack, I am waiting on Ruchi to unmute you. I'm hoping that happens in the next few
I
seconds.
have unmuted Farooq. I think he was muted on his own device.
Sure. So go ahead, Farooq. If you can just take a minute, because I do want to hear from Jeff and Kevin on this.
Yeah.
What is this surge in COVID-related online attacks?
So before I talk about that, I would like to talk briefly about the psyche of cyber criminals and cyber criminals. So whenever there is something which is keeping a broader part of a population occupied with something, which is a pandemic or an epidemic or a disaster, or something which is keeping them occupied, keeping the civil authorities, keeping the law enforcement, and of course, essential services busy with something, that's the time where cyber criminals have a ball of a time. That's the time which they want to capitalize the most on. And that is fear, the element of fear. And we as human, I mean, for us, the definition of the word fear has changed in the past 2 to 3 weeks.
Of course, yeah.
So that's something which we need to understand. And COVID-19 is one of the things which almost every stakeholder in the cybercrime space is capitalizing on right now. Be it state actors, be it non-state actors, be it small-time criminals, script kiddies, and whoever wants to make a quick buck out of it, they are leveraging this opportunity. So that's the first thing. So, and that's why we see a huge surge in COVID-19 based threats and scams. So if I talk about the key cybersecurity threats, just to top 3, I think the first one, which is the most common attack vector, is phishing. COVID-19 based phishing attacks are becoming prevalent and the most common attack vector. And one of the most common phishing attacks, which tops the list of the number of COVID-19 based phishing attacks, is an email which is making its rounds throughout the world, is a fraudulent email from WHO. It's a spoofed email address, too good to be true, has information saying that, okay, we have information about the heat map regarding the coronavirus, or if you want more information about coronavirus, click on this URL or download this file. So that's the most common one. Just give me a second. I just need to just give me a second. The second one is that there are lots of SMSing attacks also taking place, or SMS-based phishing attacks. We call them SMSing. So lots of text messages going around. The one which came up and was identified by CDC earlier this week is a message by Canadian Emergency Relief, which is saying that you have received a fund deposit, so please make the transfer. And of course, another text message which seems to be coming from Red Cross and which is talking about free masks. So phishing attacks, SMS attacks are becoming quite common.
Thank you, Farooq. And we'll leave you to just handle that little alarm. But Jeff, I'll turn it over to you, sir. Yes, we've spoken about fear. We've spoken about, this is, and I don't mean this to be hilarious, but hey, you know what? People don't want to waste a crisis, and they're going to take advantage of it. And hackers use a process called social engineering, and what more better a time. But what are some of the attacks that you're seeing that are COVID-based, and what's driving them to be so successful?
Yeah, number one, phishing attacks. That's all at the top of the chart. You can create one email on a template and distribute it to millions and millions of people. Your percentage hit rate does not need to be very high for you to be able to make that a profitable enterprise. You make no mistake, the people that are behind most of these types of attacks are organized and are looking for a small hit rate in order to generate the return that they want. This is a financial exercise. This isn't somebody just doing it for kicks. So out of chaos and fear comes opportunity. The opportunity is to get that low-hanging fruit. A concept that not a lot of people associate with dealing with phishing type of misinformation is multi-factor authentication. And we all talk about it in terms of being able to access platforms and services online using multiple different authentication tools like a password and a code, text code or whatever. Think about that when you're dealing with information and potential misinformation. If you hear something from a source, a single source like a text or an email, it is not a good idea to act on that source, whether it's clicking something or taking an action. Take the added step of verifying it through a couple of other channels. It'll reinforce that multi-factor authentication is an element of cybersecurity that you need to be aware of, but it has a genuine application when it comes to information and misinformation. And your colleagues out there that are as remote as you are a great source of determining whether that was valid or invalid in terms of a link or something you should click on.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Kat, real quick, again, I'll turn the same question over to you. I've just, if I can set a little bit of context, is, for example, I think today the Italian government was hit pretty hard with a cybersecurity attack that was impacting payments going out to those in need. Can you shed a little bit of light on what can the Canadian market or the Canadian society as a whole expect to see from cyber criminals during this pandemic?
Yeah, they're definitely leveraging that. I have several texts about deposits that I need to make. I would always advocate to go through known websites. Of course, phishing is huge, so let's not click on any links or open any attachments if you didn't request them. Especially looking for things like, if you are not addressed in an email, if it says here's the file you asked for, or funny video, if it doesn't say your name, it doesn't, hey Kat, here's that video I mentioned and it's really funny. People they're nervous and they're anxious and they're not focused, and it's a great time for hackers and criminals to take advantage of that and kind of prey on that. So I would be careful with that. I'm also a big fan of social engineering, like Jeff mentioned, and I noticed there's a resurgence again on Facebook of the let's do a fun game and list the movie that was your favorite when you were 12. Well, now you've given out your birth date. Or it's list all the names of the pets. It's like 3 truths and a lie or something. And it's like, name 3 of your pets and 1's a lie. Well, you're giving out password recovery information. Yeah. So let's just be careful, again, at this time, not to be oversharing that kind of information, because that's the way people are accessing accounts. Yeah. And then the other really big one is passwords. I talk about this one a lot. Then Disney Plus was released. There was a big thing about how they'd been hacked because lots of people had gotten into the Disney Plus accounts. It wasn't that they'd been hacked, it's that people were reusing the same passwords that they had used a long time ago. And when those passwords were released on the dark web, people picked them up and now they just keep trying them on every other service. Yeah. So at this time, especially if you're downloading new apps, new services, new things, individual passwords for all of those things, I know it's a pain. But that's going to prevent people from getting your password from one service and then reusing it on a whole bunch of other services.
Yeah, that's an extremely important point. And Farooq, I do want to come back to you for the last 7 minutes that we have. But Kat, absolutely. I think last night, a couple of folks from Durham College, we played a little game on Twitter, which was, list the first 5 jobs that you held. And of course, I said Bollywood actor, Bollywood singer, Bollywood musician. So whoever they find as a result of that is probably not going to be me. But I get your point, is that while that may have been a little just fun and just communicating and building community, there are other types of questions that could result in that whole aspect of social engineering. I know Farooq, I'll give you another minute or so. You had a couple of things you wanted to say about the COVID-19 threat landscape. Ruchi, if you can kindly unmute him. He is. Go ahead, Farooq.
Okay. So first of all, sorry about that interference by my alarm clock, which went off like crazy. So anyways,
we get it.
Yeah, so the list of COVID-19 scams is a pretty long list, but some of the other things which I really want to talk about right now is also phishing attacks more targeted towards fundraising or charities. So one of the things I was interacting with some of my peers at the provincial with OPP and RCMP, and we were having a discussion about things some new ideas which the cyber criminals are working on. So there's been a huge increase in new charities which have sprung up and who are raising fund for COVID-19 research and things like those. So one of the things that CRA has categorically said, and if you follow Canada Finance on Twitter, make sure you do that. And the Canadian Cyber Fraud Awareness Center by RCMP. One of the things which they are telling people is that if somebody approaches you or some charity or NGO approaches you for fundraising, make sure that you do go to CRA's website and check if that charity is registered. My personal opinion is that please do not give donations to any charity, because the only one organization which I know of is legitimately raising funds right now is WHO. So if you really want to give money, give all the money to WHO, because they are right now managing disbursement of funds to any country in the world which is doing anything around COVID-19 vaccine research or some kind of rehabilitation. That's the first thing. The second thing is that please be wary of these people or online campaigns focused towards selling cheap masks, cheap things. Because what I would say is that if you want to go for any online shopping or buy any sanitizers or any personal hygiene stuff or anything which is a protection against COVID-19, please buy them from known online retailers which you already shop from. Because what has also happened is that in the span of the past 3 weeks, there have been more than 5,000 new online shopping sites which have sprung up globally.
Yeah.
And we don't know that which of them is legitimate or not. So be wary of these things also. One of the things that, one last thing, I just want to take for a few more seconds, is that when we talk about COVID-19 based threats and scams, we are not just talking about scams which are cyber related. There are other scams which are on the go also. There have been cases in which there have been break-ins into the house, or there are people who have come to walk up to people's doorsteps saying that they represent the local police or the local municipality, and they're here to conduct an inspection or do some activity on cleaning or give some tips on that. None of the municipalities are doing that. Please be wary of all these things, because there are lots of criminals and robbers out there who are breaking into houses also. So COVID-19 based threats and scams are for real. Please take them seriously, and please make sure that you have taken the right steps to ensure the safety of your family also.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Farooq. We have about 6 minutes left. So, I do want to agree with you that, and all of you, that, there's been a dramatic increase in the amount of texts that I keep getting asking for my account details. And if they get into my account, well, good luck finding money, because there isn't any. But case in point that, it's, they're seeing a significant increase. And, in our future webinars, I really want to start talking about the social engineering part, because this is targeting people who are isolated, a lot of seniors right now, so on and so forth. So, Farooq, thank you for bringing this up, and thank you for all the work you do keeping our higher education sector safe and sound and secure. Now, 5 to 6 minutes left. I do want to take on some of the questions, and then when we close, we'll just do a quick fire, 2 quick tips that you can give someone. So the first question that I want to take is actually from one of my, I'll read out something that Aditya has just posted, which is be careful of, and I'll summarize, be careful of work from home kind of like scams. These have been there, pre COVID-19, but they're even escalating now. So that's a really good point, Aditya. I want to go to a question that one of my students who's working on a malware and AI solution and a dashboard for it, Shrey Raval, one of our most impressive students, he's brought up an interesting question, and he says, contingency management. Large corporations have something, their business continuity, but smaller corporations, which are 2 to 3 people perhaps, is there any standard that they can follow in terms of how do you ensure that your business can remain functional when you're not in your primary space of operation? Jeff, I'll turn it over to you for a quick 30-second perspective on that.
Yeah, actually, this fits in well to the only tip that I would give everybody in their small businesses today is do a full assessment. You take a framework, you do a full assessment of your business, you take the 2 or 3 hours it takes to do that. And in those frameworks, they give you step-by-step what it takes to ensure that your business continues after an event. The reality is small businesses cannot afford to go out and hire a consultant. Go online, Google what you need. You do the searches, look for experts, go on to your accounting firm's site. I can't tell you how valuable the information coming out of the accounting firms we deal with has been. Your bank, all of them have resources they can help you with. I'm sure that Kat can help you, I can help you. We have the ability to get you started down the path of BCP DRP planning, even for those small businesses. We have a small number of people. We've had to immediately stop going to our office and work offline. We happen to have been prepared for it, happy to take others through it. And again, I'm sure Kat would be happy to do the same.
Fantastic. Kat, and again, we'll be sharing your contact details with everyone here next week. I do want to, there's a point here by Darren Law where she says, given that we're all working at home, these online relationship scams are now growing even more. Can you shed a little bit of light on what are these scams and why are these particularly dangerous?
So a lot of these, again, they prey on people who are lonely. They're alone and lonely. So there's always been problems with dating scams and online dating services. one issue, I don't know if people realize, when you take a picture, there's metadata in that picture that actually indicates where the picture was taken geographically, with longitude and latitude. And a long time ago, most of the social sites like Twitter and Facebook, and they started stripping that data out, but many of the dating sites don't. And so one risk to me is always that if you're posting photos, especially from inside your home on a dating site, you're basically giving away the location of your house online. But again, it's more of this preying on insecurities. If you know someone, or if you are someone who's home alone and you are feeling lonely, it's hard. We want to think the best of humanity, but it's hard to remember that if somebody, always be cautious, right? The trust but verify thing. So always be cautious when someone's coming to you, and no one should be asking you for money online. I know the old school romantic schemes were always like, oh, I live in another country and I'd love to visit you, and if you could just send me money and I'll come and I'll get on a plane and I'll come see you. That's not possible right now. But it could be that someone engages in a catfishing situation where they pretend to be what you want them to be, picking up social engineering information to know exactly what that is. Oh, you like Tiger King? I like Tiger King. Let's have a relationship. And then through that, I've lost my job. If you could send me $100 so I could pay my rent, that would be really great. So it's just that kind of thing. It's just being wary, sadly, that not everyone has the best intent.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I do agree with you. And those traditional emails that you would get from some prince in some place who wants to give you $5 million in exchange for 5,000. It's become more sophisticated than that. I'm just going to do a quick run to see if there are any more questions. But before we get any more questions, I do want to give this a quick 30-second to each of you. If you had to give everybody 2 tips that you can do right away, whether it's upgrading your passwords or whatever, 2 tips that people should do right away to maintain their home security while they're working. Kat, we'll start with you. Hirji, please unmute Farooq as well.
Update all of your software. If it hasn't been updated, most of those updates will pretend that they are for new features, but really they're plugging security holes. So please update everything you have. And the other suggestion is to ensure your router, your home router that you're probably using, is not open to the public. Should be password protected.
Thank you. Farooq, 2 tips.
The first thing is that if you change your password frequently, now is the time to change your password. So change all your key passwords and have them as complex as possible. And just to Kat's point, also update the firmware of your home Wi-Fi hotspots, because the 2 key brands for Wi-Fi home routers, especially D-Link and Linksys, had some vulnerabilities in it. So make sure that all your home devices, IoT devices, are properly patched and are on a guest network and not on your main network.
Thanks, Farooq. Captain Jeff, 2 tips.
Yeah, log out of your applications when you're done using them. Don't leave them open. That's a recipe for disaster. And know where you're putting your hardware physically. Know whether or not it's in sight. Be aware of what people can see from around you or outside the home.
Excellent. I'll just throw in 1 tip just because I have to, and I have the power as moderator to say whatever I want. The one thing that I did share with some of my staff members, I think I shared it, please don't call me out, but a lot of us, we like to print out some of the documents that we have and read through them. Especially at the college, we have a lot of contracts and agreements. You're starting new projects. People print it out. Many people don't have shredders at home, and then they just wrap it up and put it in the recycling. I cannot tell you how easily it is that a lot of folks are now starting to go through those things. So whatever you're disposing, especially the recyclable materials, primarily paper that has important information, please don't recycle the traditional way. Do recycle, but invest in a shredder or find a better way to dispose of these documents. It's extremely important. I do want to wrap this discussion up because I did promise we'll close up at 1:05 p.m. I see some really important questions coming in from Jonathan, who's a friend from the town of Coburg, specifically around school boards. So what I am pleased to inform everybody is thanks to some support from Invest. Jonathan's just used a nice term, password distancing. Yeah, well played, well played. Thanks to some support from the region of Durham, and thanks to great support from Farooq, Jeff, Kat, and Madhi Raza, who couldn't make it today. We're going to be launching a series of these webinars. We've got a couple of topics coming up. One, and Jonathan, that's why I do want to hold these questions. We have one that is specifically going to be about school boards and protecting information within the school board environment. Farooq, we will be talking to you about joining this session, and a couple of leaders from the school boards to join us for that session. We have another session that will be hosted on business continuity. And then we have two more that will be focusing specifically on COVID-19 related attacks. And then a last one on how do you develop a cybersecurity framework and how do you comply with items like NIST and whatever else have you. So we have a series that we'll be launching. My colleague Mauricio will be posting about it on social media. Next steps from us is my teammates Nabil and Farhan will be compiling all of our notes, including the contact details. We'll run it by the speakers, and we hope that by Monday evening we can share that with you. So that's a little takeaway that you can use. There's a document that Jeff also has, which is like a little checklist, which we're adding our 2 rupees into, and then we'll have that also shared with you. So these are little assets that you can use. And of course, we'll be sending out all of the details about the next webinars that we're doing, starting in about 10 days from today. I do want to take this occasion once more to thank Kat, thank you again for spending your lunchtime with us. Our team at Durham College has just launched the Center for Cyber. We're looking for all the support that we can get, and the support that you give us is just tremendous. And the trust that you've placed in us also in the project that we're doing. I'm really proud of how our students continue to communicate with you consistently and are getting introduced to the working world thanks to people like you who invest in us. So Kat, thank you for your time today and for being a leading woman in cybersecurity.
Here.
All right, Captain Jeff Dawley, I call you Captain because you were one of those people who came to see us in June after our Enable AI Summit. And when we said we wanted to do stuff in cyber, but we hadn't yet started, you just said the first step of getting started is getting started. And we went out to the CISO forum, and Farooq backed us and Mehdi Raza backed us. And since then, there's been no turning back. We've grown. And Jeff, I want to thank you for being a mentor to me and for continuing to invest in everything that we do at Durham College. Thank you, Jeff.
My pleasure.
And Mr. Farooq, while Ruchi unmutes you, Farooq, you've been with us since day one. I always tell a lot of people that I was part of that committee that recommended for Farooq to join Orion. And I cannot tell you that more than you impacting Orion, you've impacted my career in many ways. And going from Orion into the world of AI, I had to find a way to come back into security. And boy, did you make it possible for me. So thank you for everything that you do, Farooq.
Thank you, and it's been a pleasure being part of this journey. And I've spent about 3 years working for the research and education sector. I've learned a lot, and what I've learned about this community so far is that this community, which spreads around the whole world, is closely knit, and there are new challenges coming up every day. So glad to be part of this, glad to be contributing to the community in any shape or form. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Fantastic, Farooq. Thank you very much. Farooq, you're still maintaining a nice haircut and the beard. I don't know how you're doing it because I am in real bad shape, as you can see, hence the hat, but we'll go through that later. So ladies and gentlemen, before we close, thank you once again. Graham Berry from Net Mechanics. We're going to be involving you in one of our webinars, so stay tuned to an email. Everybody, you know where to find me 24/7. We're always here to help the community. I do want to advise you that a message from Mehdi Raza, who's one of our sponsors, is the Cyber Exchange Online Summit is taking place on the 28th and 29th. Registration is free. I highly recommend that all of you register to that. Folks like Jeff, Kat, except Farooq, myself will be speaking, and we'll be running a couple of sponsored sessions. There will also be some free training that will be provided during that time. So please register for the online summit. I hope to see all of you there. And with that, on behalf of Durham College, I wish you all a safe, secure, and a happy weekend. And please, if there's anything my team can do for you, just reach out to us. Have a lovely rest of your Friday, and we'll see you all very soon. Take care.